Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's session about change control and management in the pharmaceutical industry. My name is Ghada Mimi. I am a Quality Assurance Associate at Inglesia Pharma Solutions. My mission today is to refresh your knowledge about change control, hopefully give you some helpful insights about the subject. Quality and implementing critical thinking is also a gap that I'm looking to bridge. So today we will dive into the controls and management technicalities, but it is also important to understand that in our continuously evolving industry, change is the only constant, and change management goes beyond ticking boxes. Managing the transformation of the organization as a whole is just as important. So, what are the different types of change? Changes can actually arise in different ways, and they can carry varying levels of risk. And to navigate them, we need to ask questions. Each scenario that arises must pass through a thorough assessment to determine its rise, which means how did the change happen, its cause, why did it happen, and the third question is what are the implications of this event, referring to the potential impact on quality, on safety, and on compliance. The objective here is to be able to review, document, and migrate each situation on its own later, because a certain change can be planned, unplanned, or emergent. But what are the differences between these changes? I will guide you today through 3 different scenarios where change is related to one concept, the coating process in production, but had different natures. Let's say a pharmaceutical company is deciding to upgrade one of its existing tablet coating machines. The goal here is to replace the older model with a more precise and more efficient one. So this upgrade has already been approved by the company's leadership and is carefully planned in advance. So this type of change is referred to as a planned change. This process is one where the change is thoughtfully designed ahead of time, with each step carefully outlined, the implementation and the processes are well understood and are well controlled before it happens. So essentially the company is proactively planning to minimize surprises and to ensure that the process runs smoothly. In this case, the change is considered low risk, meaning that the company has already conducted a thorough risk assessment, establishing measures to handle any potential challenges before the change actually takes place. This process requires a particular roadmap to implement the change successfully. The process begins with a formal change request submitted by the person or the department suggesting the change. It can be the engineering or the production team, for example, detailing why this upgrade is necessary at the moment. So, for example, we need to improve precision in the coating process or the efficiency of the process. Once the request is in, the quality team conducts an impact assessment to determine how this upgrade could affect the organization, the product quality, regulatory compliance, or the production timelines. And this evaluation is crucial to ensure that all the necessary requirements are being met before moving forward in the process. Next comes the validation phase, where the machine undergoes a series of qualification steps to confirm its proper setup, reliable operation, and its consistent performance. Basically, it's about verifying that the machine is correctly being installed according to all of the specification, testing it under real operating conditions, and confirming that the machine is constantly producing tablets meeting all the required quality standards. Operator training follows, where the staff learns to operate, to clean, and to maintain the new equipment to ensure effective use of the machine. Finally, the new machine is integrated into the production process, and the last step is to document the outcome, and all of these stages from request to documentation help the company to achieve a successful change management. Failing to accomplish one of these components can actually lead to surprises in the change monitoring phase, which leads us to our second scenario. After deploying the new coating machine without a proper process, for example, technicians discover that the coating thickness across tablets is inconsistent. In a produced batch, the tablets are not meeting the coating requirements. This is actually a problem because non-uniform drug release profiles undermine the product's performance, and this is an unexpected issue, and it represents an unplanned change as it was not foreseen in the initial planning and deployment stages of the machine upgrade. Unlike our previous scenario, this problem demands immediate corrective actions to mitigate the implications and the risks, and this inconsistency in coating might have serious implications on both the product quality and the patient safety, so it's classified as moderate to high risk according to the multiple factors influencing the risk level. For example, if the coating in question is immediate release coating, the possible implications can be aesthetic, it can be potential variation in the solution rate, or it can be customer rejection, for example. So in this case, the batch might face market rejection, but it has moderate regulatory risk, as it does not necessarily mean regulatory rejection unless the solution fails USP criteria. Now, if the coating in question is modified release, which means extended release or delayed release, this deviation can alter the drug release profiles, leading to one, increased toxicity rate due to dose bumping if the coating is too thin, or it can mean reduced efficacy due to delayed or inefficient drug release if the coating is too thick. The risk for the coating being too thick is high as regulatory rejections are likely, and the company will face market recall if the defect is detected post-release. Recognizing the potential impact of change on product performance and quality and taking an immediate action to address the issue are required here. The first step is documenting the problem through a deviation report. Production should also be temporarily paused as well to prevent further inconsistencies and to allow for a thorough investigation. Next, a root cause analysis needs to be conducted. For example, after examining the equipment and the process parameters, it is determined that the spray nozzle alignment is malfunctioning, so this is the cause for the uneven distribution of the coating solution, and corrective actions are then implemented to resolve the issue. In the example I gave, the spray nozzle alignment, the faulty nozzle should either be replaced or repaired to ensure that it functions correctly. A test batch has to be produced to verify that the problem has been resolved and that the coating thickness is now consistent and compliant with the GMP guidelines. To prevent similar issues in the future, preventive actions are also introduced. For example, the nozzle alignment checks should be incorporated into the maintenance schedule to reduce the likelihood of other unexpected malfunctions, and in addition to these CAPAs, SOPs should also be updated to include more detailed inspection steps before each production run in the future. The third type of change is emergent. It is important to not mistake this type for unplanned changes. As we established in the past two slides, unplanned changes are unexpected events requiring immediate corrective actions. However, emergent changes are changes that arise continuously due to innovation, for example, or market shifts within established frameworks, and these events require adaptation and strategic alignment. Staying on the subject of the coating processes, for example, during production, a regulatory authority issues an urgent update mandating the use of a different coating material to reduce a certain health risk. This represents an emergent change because it's triggered by an unforeseen and urgent scientific discovery that requires an immediate attention. Given the urgency and the potential impact on product safety in this case, This change is classified as high risk. The company must act quickly to remain compliant with the regulatory requirements, and it is equally important to ensure that the transition is managed in a controlled manner. This involves conducting risk assessments, validating the new material, updating the documentation, and training the staff to prevent any compromise in product quality or regulatory compliance or patient safety. To handle this change, the first step is an immediate assessment made by the quality team. This team quickly evaluates how switching to the new coating material will impact the current production process. They need to ensure that the product integrity is maintained. All at the same time, this team needs to verify that the new chosen material aligns with the updated standards set by the authorities to prevent any compliance risk in the future. Next, the company initiates a fast-track implementation. The coating machine settings like spray rate, temperature, airflow are all adjusted to accommodate the new material. Trial batches should also be produced and tested for key quality attributes like coating thickness, stability, to confirm that the new formulation meets the required specifications. And at the same time, engagement with regulatory authorities takes place. The company notifies the relevant agency of the modifications, provides them with all of the necessary documentation like test results and details of process adjustments to ensure smooth regulatory approval. The operator training and documentation updates follow, where staff members included in the production process receive immediate training on handling and applying the new coating material to make sure they are using it safely and effectively. Additionally, all of these changes are recorded in batch records, and SOPs should be revised accordingly to reflect the process. So, what are the different categories of change? Let's say you are making a small adjustment to the labeling that does not involve critical information. For example, you are changing the font size on the label, or you're making some adjustments to batch sizes within validated ranges. This adjustment has limited to no expected impact on the product quality, efficacy, and safety, so less likely to require prior regulatory approval. So often a notification to the authority is sufficient, and the changes can typically be implemented without waiting for the approval. In another context, let's say you are making changes to the manufacturing processes like introducing a new equipment or a method of sterilization, for example. This is a substantial modification that can actually impact the product quality, efficacy, and safety. So this change requires a prior regulatory approval before you can implement it. The submission of detailed documentation to authorities, including all validation studies, risk assessments, is mandatory prior to proceeding. Another category is critical changes. These are emergencies or highly significant changes that are often driven by an urgent need to address a compliance or a safety issue. So, for example, if you are facing an immediate recall due to contamination or adverse events, this is a safety issue. If you are making a rapid change to a label or to a package to include a safety warning, for example, that was mandated by a regulatory authority, this is a compliance issue. These changes are high risk to patient safety or product compliance and require immediate actions like issuing a Dear Health Professional letter that should be followed by a submission of a comprehensive post-change report and should be addressed rapidly to prevent reoccurrence. The process of change control begins with identifying the need for a change and recognizing whether it's planned, unplanned, or emergent, while also categorizing the impact as minor, high, or urgent. To avoid wasted efforts, the initial step of identification should be conducted by a subject matter expert acting as the change owner. He or she raises a change control request form. Accurate early identification that the subject matter expert provides allow the company to assess the potential impact and prioritize the change accordingly. And this subject matter expert documents this need in the change control request form, outlining the reasons for the change, the scope, and the potential reasons and benefits of this event. Once this form is completed, it is submitted to the line manager for review. He or she, often a department expert in change control, examines the request to ensure that it aligns with the organization's goals, determines whether the change is technically feasible and necessary at the moment. The rationale must be clearly articulated and justified. For example, if a manufacturing process is being modified, the justification must demonstrate how this change aligns with the business objectives, whether it's complying with quality and regulatory compliance or not. The next phase involves a primarily assessment conducted by the quality assurance team. They perform a high-level screening to evaluate feasibility, identify the potential risks, and ensure that the change complies with all of the regulatory standards. If it, for example, impacts how raw materials are stored, quality assurance will verify that this new method adheres to good manufacturing practices and minimizes the contamination risks. After this review, the quality assurance logs the request into the change control database and assigns a unique change control reference number for tracking purposes. At the same time, quality assurance issues a change control impact assessment form to capture the detailed information about how the change affects the operations, safety, and compliance. The subject matter expert then completes the change control impact assessment form by outlining the specific impacts of the change. For example, if it involves introducing a new cleaning protocol for equipment, the subject matter expert needs to detail how it will affect production, how it will affect staff and the training requirements, and the potential risks like cross-contamination. Once both the change control impact assessment form and the change control request form are complete, they are presented to the change review board, which typically comprises cross-functional teams like quality assurance, regulatory affairs, operations, senior management, and this board evaluates the change in detail. They perform a comprehensive risk assessment to identify the potential hazards, to ensure that the adequate migration plans are in place. This in-depth evaluation examines the technical, operational, and regulatory impacts of the change. So if the change increases the risk of product contamination, for instance, this might require additional safeguards, like enhanced monitoring or more frequent equipment validations. And based on this evaluation, the board decides whether to approve, reject, or they might request modification to the change request. Throughout all of this process, effective communication is crucial to ensure that all of the stakeholders from quality assurance, control, manufacturing, regulatory teams are all informed of the change and the implications. And if the change is approved, the board will outline the required actions, the required timelines, the responsible personnel, documenting all of these details in the change control action execution form. Quality assurance logs these actions, deadlines, and assigned owners into the change control database to ensure full traceability. The subject matter expert, acting as the overall change owner, then oversees the implementation process to ensure that the timelines are being met, that the resource allocation and introduced protocols are planned. Once all of these actions have been completed, the subject matter expert gathers the evidence to confirm that the change have been fully executed. This evidence is reviewed by the line manager as well to ensure that all the requirements have been met. And following this, the quality assurance conducts a final review, also known as a change verification of CC database, schedules a effectiveness check to ensure that the change has achieved the intended purpose without introducing risks. So the subject matter expert performs the effectiveness check, and if this change meets all of the objectives, it's officially chosen for the final review from both the manager and line manager and the quality assurance team. However, if any issues are identified during the effectiveness check, corrective actions are taken and the process might loop back to address these issues before the final closure. This ensures that the problem, like the one we mentioned in the second scenario, where the coating tablets were uneven, won't happen after implementing a new machine. This slide is a detailed strategy for change control, but we should not navigate it solely by ticking boxes, but also by applying critical thinking. It's not wise to allocate as much resources, time, teams, just because we are changing a cleaning solvent for a non-product contact surface, for example. Each change is different and should be evaluated and dealt with in a strategic manner. So the question we should ask here is, what makes or breaks a change management system? Beyond the technicalities of documentation, assessments, and monitoring, change management is actually a mindset. It's a mindset of clear communication and positive change culture. This is an important point that leads us to a global problem that companies need to focus on, which is the concept of resistance to change or change reluctance. First, we need to talk about why people resist change in the first place. It's really about disliking a new process or a new technology, and often about not feeling heard or valued or prepared for what's coming. When we notice a pushback, it's usually a sign that we need to take a deeper look and understand the underlying fears or frustrations that our teams may be experiencing. I recognize that many of you must have been through multiple changes in short periods, whether it's a new system, a new goal, or a new procedure, and this can lead to what we call the change fatigue, this sense of weariness and stress from constantly having to adapt in the company. So when employees are tired of change, it becomes harder to them to embrace yet another direction. So this is why leadership needs to be mindful of this fatigue and ensure that the pace is sustainable, communicate clearly why each shift is necessary and how it will ultimately benefit the organization and the employees. A big factor in change effort is trust. If there is a lack of trust in leadership, it can undermine even the best plans. Some employees may feel that decisions are made at the top without understanding the challenges they are facing every day. Others might feel left out of the conversation or uncertain about where the organization is headed. Part of this trust issue can come from an overly authoritative leadership style, for example, where instructions feel like more like commands than collaborations. So if the vision seems unclear or if the decisions appear arbitrary, people will naturally hesitate. Also, sometimes companies become so focused on internal metrics and processes that they forget to highlight how a change can benefit the customers. The employees can't see the purpose of the change in this case, so it can feel like busy work for them rather than progress, and they may not see a clear rationale for the change, making them even more resistant. Another shrinking point is the excessive paperwork, excessive approvals, or administrative tasks that slow employees down when they are not really necessary. So It's frustrating for them and can make any change feel cumbersome. And if companies don't provide the adequate resources also, whether it's training or budget or time, people will feel unprepared, they will feel overwhelmed, and when they feel like they don't have the necessary skills or training to adapt to a new procedure or system, they may lack the confidence to step into the process. So companies need to invest in a successful change management strategy. So as we can see here, in all of these cases, the human factor that is usually underestimated in this context plays a primary role to overcome the resistance or make it, and should never be ignored. So the reluctance to adapt may stem from different reasons, but it ultimately leads to the same severe outcomes on the long run. The change resistance can lead to serious quality lapses like contaminations, misformulations, packaging errors, affecting both the product safety and public trust, and can also lead to operational failures. This poor mindset can result in hefty regulatory fines, product recalls, and even class action lawsuits, causing lasting damage to the organization's finances and reputation. So, as we saw, overcoming change resistance is a long journey that won't necessarily be successful if enough damage has been already done. Organizations need to operate in a transparent manner, have a honest communication with its employees, have a inclusive decision-making processes, simplify their processes when possible, and have a skill and training support. This is just as important as forms and as approvals in a successful change management plan. This was all. Thank you for watching. The insights and strategies that we shared today are integral to navigate the evolving work environment in the pharmaceutical industry. Let's use them to navigate change and to ensure that we are not only adapting but also thriving. This was Radamini speaking today. Thank you for joining and see you next time.